Oh, it's great to be back with the student chapter, man. This is it was fun putting the presentation together and thinking about all my times in the chapter. It's cool to be back. I wish it was in person, but virtually is a lot easier.
Well, it's great that the digital technology allows something like this, and it means an awful lot to a lot of the students, I'm sure. So it's great to have an alum here, especially one of your caliber. So I wish you the very best. I may have to skip out a little early, so.
Yeah. No worries.
I'll submit my questions to you in writing.
All righty, guys. So we are live. So I'm going to start my screen share and we'll get rolling here. So let's get that up. Cool. All righty. Awesome. Letting these last folks. Okay, cool. Welcome everybody to the student chapter of the Wildlife Society's general member meeting. Great one for you here today. So thanks for coming. So some of our projects are getting up and going, and to be able to go out on those things, volunteer, get some hands-on experience, you do have to pay dues. So dues are $5 a semester, $8 a year. So for this semester, it would just be the $5 for you. And then you can do that through online payment options like PayPal, and then just searching at UWSP TWS, just like the little image here. And that should pop up with our logo and everything, and should be good to go there. Otherwise, you can drop off some cash at my office hour from Mondays at 11 till noon. If you're using PayPal, just make sure you're using friends and family, so we don't get assessed a fee, and then you'd also don't get assessed a fee either. Cool.
All right, to go out on projects along with dues, we also need a couple other things. We need a hold harmless form, which I sent out in an email last few weeks ago. If you don't have the form, feel free to email me and I can send you the form. There's also just a general membership form. Even if you aren't going out on projects, we would love if you could fill this out just so we have a good idea of who's coming to meetings and who's sort of part of the society. And then if you don't get emails from us already, you can join us on Spin and then you'll be automatically added to our email list. So you can get all those fun job announcements and notifications about projects and all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Thank you, Melinda. Lizzie.
All right, our conservation topic for this week is about how coyotes and red foxes are not as trashy as we once thought. By trashy, of course, I mean into our garbage. So there's this recent study done in suburban New York on both coyotes and red foxes to analyze how much of human foods they're actually eating. Because, I mean, it's kind of just been a guess since then. Like, you know, they hang around our houses and like are kind of in our garbage, so they're probably eating a lot of our garbage. But this study actually found that they're not eating as much of our trash as we thought. So they analyzed scat samples for natural and human foods, and they analyzed like all the little hairs in the scat. And they found that for coyotes, only about 12% of anthropogenic food was in coyote samples. The rest of it was deer. I think over 50% of it was deer, most likely from all the road kills, and then small mammals made up the rest. Foxes, on the other hand, they're eating mostly birds and small mammals. But fortunately, this is in the area of like where the piping plovers are, since they're endangered. And they actually found that there was no samples of piping plovers in fox scat, which is a good sign. They're not eating our endangered birds. So that's like one less thing we have to worry about on that front. There were no seasonal changes for either of the species. Well, this could mean that like for the residential people in the area, they can feel a little bit more relieved that like coyotes and foxes really aren't bothering us as much as we once thought. And we'll have to do further studies in like other cities to see if that holds up elsewhere or if it's just kind of in this area. So with that, we can move on to our quiz bowl. We got a couple fun ones today. So from how far away can foxes hear a watch ticking? And this is like kind of a generalization. I think it probably varies based on each individual, but and then the second question we have is, how long is the gestation period for coyotes? Let's see how well you guys know your canids.
Answers rolling in. Give everybody 5, 4, 3, 2, bunch of answers, 1. Okay, gonna end it and share the results with you guys.
All right, you guys got the ticking one, right? The watch ticking. That's kind of crazy to think that they can hear watch ticking from 40 yards away. Like I can sometimes not hear my watch from like a foot away. So that's pretty insane. And that just like gives credence to like how well they are hunters of small mammals, because they can hear those low frequency little like small mammal sounds in the brush, and that's why they're so good at hunting. And then coyotes, you guys got this one wrong, unfortunately. It's actually only 2 months. So they're breeding right now in February, and they'll be having pups in like April. Math, yes. I don't know why that was so hard, but yeah, about 2 months for them.
Awesome. Thank you, Lizzie.
All right. And we still have buttons for sale. We have a lot of buttons. The Hinkstrom buttons, as you can see, lovely on the screen. Not pictured is the Sartini and Dubé buttons. We still have a few of those available for sale. They're $1 each, or get this, 3 for $3. What a steal. And you can buy them by going to Nate's office hour, which is at 11 to noon on Mondays in office 359A. And if you can't make it to that time, let me know, and like I can make arrangements to get you a button if you really want one.
For examples, we have the other buttons here. Oh gosh, it's gonna glare. The Great Sartini, and then we also have Dr. Dubé. I like dead things, riding a flying squirrel. So yeah, come in, see me, grab a couple buttons. It's a deal you can't pass up. 3 for 3. Unbelievable. Okay, cool. Thank you, Lizzie.
We may have to reprint the riddle ones too.
Yeah, back by popular demand.
Mm-hmm. And then last thing for me, I sent out a survey last week. I'll probably send one out again after this meeting just to refresh it in your feed. But if you guys would just mind taking the survey real quick, it would really help us out. We just want to hear feedback, hear how we're doing and how you guys think we could be doing better. So we would really appreciate it if you just took a couple minutes. And if you completed it already, thanks. Like, really helps us out.
Awesome. Cool. Brady.
Hello, everyone. The Rough Grouse Project is looking for 1 to 2 new co-leaders this spring, and no experience is needed for this. Our project goes out weekends after spring break, and we trap, radio collar, and do radio telemetry on rough grouse. So it's a pretty fun time, and then we take all our data and analyze it and present at professional conferences, so you get a lot of experience that way. So I'll send out the application after the meeting.
Awesome. Thank you, Brady. And like we always say, guys, do not be afraid to apply for these positions. Anybody can get them. Don't feel like you don't have enough skills to fill these positions. Anybody can get these. So do not be afraid to apply. Jacob, are you out there?
Hey guys, this will be the last week to sign up for the spring 2021 Wildland Firefighter course. The dues are this Friday. It's $150, and I definitely recommend getting it done. It's only 5 days. It starts next Friday, and we are opening up to other universities now to fill. So definitely would fill out the form if you guys are interested by the end of this Friday. And if you have any questions, you can email me right there, and I will also attach the SPIN website to get to the form.
Sweet. Thank you, Jacob. Fire is very important, guys. Very important tool. Shelby.
Hello, everyone. So every Friday, we feature a wildlife photo taken by one of our members on our Instagram and Facebook page for what we call Fauna Friday. So if you have any cool wildlife photos you've taken recently or in the past, you can send them in by either DMing our Instagram page at UWSP_TWS or by emailing me, and my email is up there on the slide. And then you can follow our student chapter on multiple social media platforms. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, You can even add us on Snapchat with the code up there on the slide. And our meetings are also recorded, so if you ever miss one, you can find those recordings on both our website and our YouTube channel.
Awesome. Thank you, Shelby. So that does it, guys, for announcements. But a quick one last announcement here. Next week, we have the TWS Wildlife Pictionary Challenge, guys. Okay. Are your drawings going to look like Lizzie's drawings here at the top? Or are they going to look like something I would draw here in the bottom? We will have to see. Hope you guys show up. Let's do a little sneak peek of how this is going to work. So I am going to stop my share for 1 second, and I'm going to start sharing a different screen here. So can you guys all see my little paint here? So I will be splitting you guys into teams, probably just do random, and then each person that would like to and that has access to paint or some other drawing notepad of some sort will then be chosen from your team, and then they would be able to share their screen, and then this is how it would go. So once you're on your team, let's say I'm on the red team. So only red team would be able to guess what I'm drawing. But right now, we're all going to be on the same team, okay, guys? So I'm going to start drawing something. There's a few of you that know what I'm going to draw because I've practiced this with some of the officers. So you guys don't get to guess, okay? But everybody else, you guys are going to try to guess what I'm doing. And then the first person to get it would get the points for their team. So just to practice, I'm going to start drawing something. And these are going to be things related to wildlife, okay? So could be a technique, could be an animal, could be anything related to wildlife. So Lizzie, could you watch the chat for me and tell me if you see the first person to guess what we have, okay? So I'm gonna start drawing here.
Oh, we got someone. Looks like,
Cool.
Oh man, lots of people. Melina typed it in first.
Awesome. It is telemetry. You guys are scaring me. I'm like, I hope it's not too bad. Nobody's kidding. Okay. Yes. So it'd be just like that. So hope you guys can come by. We're going to have a little game night. You know, we're always talking science. We're always trying to learn things, but we're going to take a step back, just have a fun game night with you guys. So hope to see you next week. Alrighty, let me get this off here now. Let's get rid of that. Okay, cool. So without further ado, we are going to go back to this. Okay, cool. So very special guest here today. This week, we have Travis Booms, who's an Alaskan wildlife researcher and a past UWSP TWS president. Super happy to have you, Travis. So the rest of the time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Nate. I'll see if I can share my screen. Oh,
1 second. You should be able to now.
Share. Okay, you should be able to see a slide now.
Looks good. Yep.
Okay. Thanks again for the invite, Nate. It was a real pleasure meeting you 2 years ago in Reno. And you'll see that this is one of the themes that I will continue throughout my talk, in meeting people, networking, and doing a really good job when you meet people, when you work for people. It makes a really big difference. And I just want to start. It's a real pleasure being back in the Wildlife Society as president, I think in '98, if I recall correctly. And I don't think students there can appreciate the powerhouse of the chapter that you have. I know I didn't when I was there. But just seeing 80 participants there or thereabouts at a virtual TWS student chapter meeting, when the local student chapter here in Fairbanks has, on a good day, we'll have maybe 10 in person. You are the benefactors of a phenomenal culture there at UWSP. And it's really neat to be back. So thank you for having me. So I'll dive in here. Let's see here. Just wanted to provide a roadmap, just two basic things that I'll be going over. First, kind of an overview of my position and how I got here and the projects that I'm currently working on. And then I'm going to end with a number of tips that I've thought about that hopefully might be useful to you all as you seek to become a professional in the wildlife field. or a field of your choice. A lot of this is applicable to other natural resources or biology fields. So very briefly, I graduated from Point, and I spent a lot of time with the student chapter as a member. All 4 years that I was there, I was the project leader of multiple projects, student chapter president, and went to conferences and was really engaged throughout the wildlife, throughout my time at Point. And my experiences there, I can say, led directly to my success. There's no doubt. Point has a phenomenal academic program, phenomenal professors, but your experiences that you're getting as a member of the student chapter there are really value added and are not available to many undergrads in other parts of the nation. So really, it's a really awesome opportunity. I then went from there to Boise State University, where I got a master's in raptor biology and did my master's work on gyrfalcons in Western Greenland. One of the points that I'll make later is that one of the contacts that I made in Stevens Point enabled me to do that project in Western Greenland, and that really impacted the trajectory of my career and also my personal life, to be honest. From there, I took a little time off and then completed a PhD in zoology here in Fairbanks, and I'll be going over a number of things, a number of my projects, and if you want to follow up specifically on anything, you can find a lot of it at my website there on the screen. How's the bandwidth? Is everything going okay?
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, cool. Sometimes I don't have great bandwidth here. So I currently work for the Threatened, Endangered, and Diversity Program as a regional wildlife biologist, and our mission is to conserve the natural diversity of Alaska's wildlife, habitat, and ecosystems. Let's see. And I want to include a little bit of background on how my program is funded, because there are a lot of jobs out there for undergraduates and recent graduates through what's called the State Wildlife Grant Program, which is a nationwide program that provides federal dollars, so federal matching dollars to each state. So it's similar to Pittman-Robertson or Dingell-Johnson, in that there's federal dollars provided to each state, providing that they provide matching money. And in the State Wildlife Grant Program, these funds are typically spent on species that are usually not hunted or fished, with the effort to conserve them before they become endangered or threatened. So that's the program that I work for within the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, working mainly on non-game species. So I'm coming to you right now from a little cabin in the Goldstream Valley, just north of Fairbanks. So I wanted to kind of put myself on the map for all of you. It's obviously winter up here. And it's hard to grasp the challenge of doing wildlife biology in Alaska for a variety of reasons, one of which is the state is so large. So it's about the size of 7 Wisconsins, not much for a road system. And yet, we still have about 350 vertebrate species that we're responsible for managing as a state agency. That makes collaboration and interpersonal skills all that much more important, I think, because we have quite limited personnel resources, logistical resources, and a huge state to do your wildlife management and wildlife research in. So that's also a theme that I would like to pull throughout this whole talk. The importance of developing those interpersonal and collaborative skills while you're there at Point. I'll briefly go over 5 recent research projects that I have been working on, and I'll end with a little bit more detail on the Golden Eagle project as of late. So one of the projects that I'm working on that is probably the most challenging for me is trying to determine the occurrence and distribution of a very rare songbird called the gray-headed chickadee. There you can see the distribution of the chickadee in North America. So it has quite a restricted range. It's always been a pretty uncommon species, but it appears to have become much more uncommon in the recent past. So collaborators and I have been doing surveys for this species, and we put together this paper that came out this past year, summarizing the knowledge and conservation status of the species in North America. And in that, we took a deep dive into the historical literature and museum specimens and amassed basically what is known about the species in North America. And this is about 160 occurrence records dating back into the 1800s to get an understanding of where they at least used to occur. And here's the distribution map based on records from 2000 onwards. And showing a very likely range constriction in the recent past. Furthermore, I went to a number of these historical locations and conducted call playback surveys to try to determine if chickadees were still present at the places where they were present previously. And as you can see, I spent over 800 hours, my colleague and I have spent over 800 hours surveying for the species, and we've detected a grand total of 3 individuals and no indication of breeding. So try to put some statistics on that one. That seems to also be one of my specialties, is working on species with extremely small sample sizes. But interestingly, I've been invited just this past week by the Canadian Wildlife Service to use information that we provided in that manuscript. And I know the slide is a pretty boring slide, but to review, and here is hot off the press, a current draft form of the Kasiwak report, status report on gray-headed chickadees. So this is the report that the Canadian Wildlife Service will use to help determine whether or not to list the species as an endangered species. So I wanted to show this to you as a really good tangible example of how your research can directly impact a national and international policy and management decisions, even when you have extremely small sample sizes. So statistics and statistical rigor is very important, but it's context related, right? So if you can only find 3 individuals, and yet you spend 10 years looking for them, that doesn't diminish the significance of those results. And those are very applicable to current policy decisions that are being made, and in this instance in Canada. Okay, switching gears a little bit, looking into one of the long-term projects that I'm working on here in Western Alaska. Can you see my mouse moving? Yeah, okay, right on. On the Seward Peninsula, so we're looking at cliff nesting raptors. This is a long-term monitoring effort where we survey with helicopters about 500 cliff structures. Here you can see whitewash from a cliff nesting raptor surrounded by orange lichen, which feeds off of the nitrogenous waste of the birds, and is an indicator of where raptor nests may be. So we fly by these sites in May and June and determine occupancy and productivity of, again, about 500 sites. And then continuing with the collaboration theme, I work with the graduate students from the Peregrine Fund in Boise, Idaho. And here's a former graduate student, Michael Henderson. And they follow up and do focused research projects on gyrfalcons, putting game cameras up at nest sites and doing a variety of research projects. And Michael is now graduated and is the program manager for this program. So that is an ongoing project that I work on every year. A project that has ended, but has also been used quite a bit for management and conservation implications, is a radio telemetry or satellite telemetry study we did on short-eared owls, with the goal of identifying migration and wintering areas. We deployed 26 tags, and here you can see a satellite transmitter. This is an Argos tag on a short-eared owl, and I'm putting it on the owl using a backpack-style harness. And we deployed those near Tok, Alaska, and then on the Seward Peninsula. And obviously, this is the first fall migration of this species. Interestingly, it's a migratory bird, and you would think most migratory birds would come back. For those birds that stayed on the air the next spring and summer, none of them returned to Alaska, and instead they appeared to have nested in the lower 48. So this elucidated a pretty interesting aspect of the natural history of the species that is challenging to managers, because they are nomadic and they may not necessarily return to sites repeatedly, which presents real challenges for monitoring populations and determining population status and trend. This is a project that is led by Jeff Kidd, a research biologist he lives in Washington now, looking at rough-legged hawk movements. Again, looking at trying to document the migration and wintering areas of the species. This is very much a collaborative project. I provided logistical support for Jeff when he came up to Western Alaska, to the Seward Peninsula, helped him trap birds, but he and a number of graduate students are actually working up the data and whatnot. So this is an example of a collaboration that I'm helping with, but providing fairly small overall support, but yet key support, because based on those surveys that I did, I knew where all the nesting birds were. So he was able to come up, be efficient with his time, set up traps at places that were occupied, and catch birds. And then I want to dive a little bit deeper into one of the larger and more recent projects that I've been working on, looking at golden eagle migrations outside of Alaska. So the goal of this project was to identify the migration and wintering areas of golden eagles that summer in Alaska, but obviously most of them don't winter in Alaska. So we deployed 53 satellite transmitters on primarily adult golden eagles over the course of 3 years. And the reason for this is that this is a good photograph of golden eagle breeding habitat in central Alaska. This Alaska range. What most of you would probably envision what Alaska is. It's fairly pristine, undeveloped habitat. And there are lots of golden eagles up here, and they, for the most part, carry on their nesting cycle unaffected by humans, at least directly. Here you have, I think she's probably a female golden eagle with 2 chicks in the nest. And so golden eagle biology and conservation in Alaska really isn't too hard. We kind of let them do what they do. However, come fall, they leave Alaska and they encounter habitats like this, like many other migratory birds. And they face challenges that are not present on their northern breeding grounds, such as wind turbines, roads, and roadkill. And through this, a fair number of eagles, here mainly bald eagles, but also golden eagles, experience mortality. So we wanted to try to understand, how do Alaska's golden eagles navigate these threats? And when I say Alaska's, I mean eagles that summer in Alaska. These are shared resources, of course. But we wanted to understand how these adult breeding birds navigated these threats after they left Alaska. And like good science, we based our efforts on those who came before us. So this is one of the kind of leading papers on golden eagle movements in Alaska, published by Carol McIntyre in 2008. She was the first person to put any number of satellite transmitters on eagles. That she put them on fledglings, and really was the first person to identify where hatchier birds from Alaska go in the non-breeding season. So, but the question remains, what about the adult breeders? And for a long-lived species, a case-selected species, of course, the adult breeders are an important component of the population, because if you see population declines in the breeding component, and it takes 4 or 5 years for individuals to mature to enter that breeding segment of the population, you want to make sure that you understand the breeding biology, or understand the biology of that breeding population. So most researchers catch adult breeding golden eagles on territory in the summer, and they come in under the nest cliff at night under cover of darkness, because eagles obviously have good vision, and you don't want to have the eagles seeing you associated with the trap. However, it doesn't get dark in Alaska in the summer. So that presents a pretty substantial challenge to catch breeding eagles. And a lot of people have tried to do this, and most of them have failed in Alaska for good reasons. Eagles are extremely difficult birds to catch, particularly adults. So we ended up going out in 2013 and completely failing. We didn't catch a single bird. We didn't even have a bird come down to our bait. So we didn't give up. We reorganized and focused on the details, and we ended up finding this solution, which is this photo is our trapping site. Here you can see a delicious looking moose carcass with lots of fresh blood on the snow. And here it looks like a tussock, but under that tussock is actually a net launcher. So this is a device powered by a blank rifle cartridge that sends 4 steel projectiles out of these barrels, connected to a big 30 by 30 foot net that carries the net out over whatever you're trying to catch. And again, because we wanted to be very inconspicuous with the eagles, we covered the unit up with snow, and then it covered the front of the unit with grass. So it looked a lot like a tussock. And so we made the set, and then about a half mile back, we would sit all day long in a little blind behind it with a snow machine that we would end up covering with a white sheet, again, trying to be as camouflaged as possible. And here's where I would spend my exciting days for 10 to 12 hours every day for a month in a little 6 by 6 foot black box looking out a window. And this is, I've actually spent probably a year and a half of my life so far in a blind like this. So if you like sitting in dark places, like a great field for you. Obviously a joke, but we do spend a lot of time in blinds. And you spend your time in the blinds hoping to see this. This is a video that I hope works with my bandwidth. Is that running? Okay, so you see a golden eagle on some bait. Here you can see the net launcher, and there's ravens. And I'm sitting in a blind with a remote detonator waiting for the right moment to hit the button. And you'll see the net come flying out of here in a second. Eagle's eating. There goes the net. And there we just caught a golden eagle. And I don't know if you can hear us getting out of the blind. We snow machine down there. You're going to see me entering from stage left. And you can see me jump back. Having its legs, because obviously that's the most dangerous part of an eagle. Okay, and now this is in slow motion. Is the video still working okay? Yeah, okay. So this is in slow motion. You'll see the net clear the eagle and it launch up, and then the net comes down on it. And we just caught a golden eagle. And of course, all this is closely permitted and regulated by the USGS Bird Banding Lab and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Catching and banding and putting transmitters on golden eagles is a very high bar to pass. But you're already starting on your path to passing those kinds of permits by being involved, getting your hands dirty in the Wildlife Society, starting to handle animals, starting with common everyday animals like squirrels and hares. That's how you work up to eventually being permitted to capture and handle golden eagles. So we figured out how to catch adult golden eagles, and the floodgates kind of opened, and it was really a really enjoyable success. We started catching a lot of eagles. And of course, once we caught eagles, we'd put satellite transmitters on them. So here's a 45-gram microwave telemetry satellite transmitter. And you can see the Teflon ribbon that we're using to custom build a harness for each eagle. And we use dental floss and actually suture the tips, the ends of the Teflon ribbon together to form a harness. And then we super glue the edges and the dental floss. And we put these transmitters on birds with the hope that they will stay on for the life of the bird. There are some schools of thought to include a breakaway, a weak link in the system so that the bird does not carry the transmitter and be burdened by it for the rest of its life. We chose to not use that because we wanted multiple years of data, and we still have about 10 birds that are on the air, some of them providing 7 years now of data, which is some really useful information to look at multi-year variation in individuals. And then one of the things that I want to impress upon you, and this took me a while to develop, is when you're in these moments handling these phenomenal wildlife, whether they're eagles or squirrels or deer or turkeys, whatever, do you take a little time to soak it in? We are the rare few that are allowed to handle these really amazing animals. And I get caught up in getting the band on, getting the transmitter on, getting the work done, and that's important. It took me quite a while to realize it's okay to take 10 or 30 seconds and just take in this spectacular animal that you're dealing with. And they are pretty phenomenal. Like, just look at the, the talons on a golden eagle. And these are adults. These birds have been, catching animals every couple of days regularly for their entire lives. And they're really, really impressive animals, and each of them has a little story. So this is one that we caught that was actually banded already, missing a central toe. And of course, after we're done processing them, you let them go and hope that they provide you lots of years of data. And collectively, that's exactly what this project has done. So this is an example of the migration spring and fall migration of our birds over, I think this is just 1 year data, I believe. And a number of publications that are coming out of that data set. And we are still very much analyzing those data and getting papers and building our understanding of golden eagle conservation and management out of this data set. Okay, now on to the things that you might find most interesting in this talk is my tips to you for how you might become a wildlife professional or forestry professional or natural resources professional, whatever field you are in, recognizing that there are more than just wildlife biologists, hopefully, in the Wildlife Society. And I hate to say it, but I'll be honest with you, one of the first things that you need to focus on is your GPA. And this is an analogy that I would like to use is after my master's, I took some time off and I overwintered at the summit of the Green. And this was the entrance door one morning when I woke up to the building in which I was sleeping. And we had a big blizzard, and we were snowed in, and we had to shovel a tunnel out the front door to get out of our building. And a low GPA in your first year or two of college can kind of make you feel like you're having to tunnel your way out to get out of your building and on top of the snow. So especially for those of you who are earlier in your academic career at Point, do the best you can on your GPA. Most people are not going to get a 4.0, and that's perfectly fine. But do focus on your GPA. It makes a big difference in your ability to craft the path and shape the path that you want to become a professional. Second is find a mentor. Do this early in your career at Point, as early as you can. And then when you find a person, kick butt in whatever you're doing with that person, whether it's lab work, whether it's field work, whether it's report writing, whether it's helping out in class or in the lab. Dedicate yourself to doing the absolute best job that you can do, because it's the right thing to do. But also, when you have mentors that recognize and know the potential and the work ethic that you have, they come around, and when you need letters of recommendation or you need career advice or thoughts on how to get into graduate school, you're already set up for success. Professional networking. The professors there at Point have a tremendous network of colleagues that are looking for graduate students, they're looking for techs, they're looking for agency biologists. If the professors there know you and your interest and your abilities and your skills, they will be able to help you figure out where to fit in to your career path and your profession. And so I had to throw up one corny looking photo of me. Bob took this photo of me when I was at Point. This is in, I believe, in North Dakota. And I was very fortunate. My freshman year, I found a professor that did what I wanted to do. And I didn't really realize it at the point. And I latched onto him. And Bob was very kind, and he provided me a ton of mentorship and guidance. And then it's been really enjoyable after I graduated and entered the work field to be able to start working with the professors that helped me along the way. So really find someone who's doing what you want to do and work with them and develop a mentorship relationship with them. It's incredibly helpful and rewarding. And now I'm kind of preaching to the choir, I presume. Another tip is get your hands dirty and do that in the Wildlife Society. It is so incredibly valuable to get these experiences early on. And it's not just the experiences that are in the photographs, in the field, doing the fun stuff with the animals. It's doing the behind the scenes work of setting up the Zoom calls and organizing and putting out membership and making buttons and selling buttons and all that stuff that I see Nate and the other organizers and chapter leaders doing. Those are all skills that you're building that will prepare you very well for graduate school or for an early career job and further on throughout the rest of your profession, your professional life. So you're already doing it. Encourage those who are not in the chapter. It's really, really helpful. Get involved. And this is how I met Nate, and how the reason why I'm here with all of you today is that I went to a conference, and he and a number of your colleagues went to a conference, and we networked. And so that's the fourth thing I would suggest. go to conferences and network. Here you see your fellow student chapter members with the former president of the Wildlife Society. I mean, making really wonderful networking connections. And scientific societies are providing a lot of student workshops, a lot of student socials. We are tailoring these things to help students overcome that uncomfortable barrier of being a student and seeing a professional and not wanting to go up to him or her and make the first connection. So whenever possible, go to conferences, go in a pack so that you have some comfort with your friends. Find other pointers. Pointers, generally speaking, will be very willing. They'll be eager to talk to other pointers, and there's a lot of us out there. And then also at conferences, you learn who's doing what by going to all these talks. You learn who is doing the type of work that matches your interests. Another suggestion, volunteer, and don't just volunteer within the Wildlife Society. This is a photo of Josh Spice, who is a former pointer and former TWS member. And when I was in graduate school, I needed a reliable volunteer to come out and spend an entire summer with me working on falcons in Western Alaska. And I asked Bob, hey, do you know any really kick butt students at Point? And he recommended Josh Spice, and he came out and volunteered with me. Josh is a phenomenal biologist, phenomenal person. He ended up working with me for 3 years, 3 summers. He ended up getting a job with the Fish and Wildlife Service and now with the National Park Service. And he now lives in Fairbanks, Alaska, working for the Park Service. And he got that job and that career path through this volunteer position. So volunteer, and again, not only just volunteer, but when you're doing it, kick butt. Another tip, broaden your horizons. Even if you never want to leave Wisconsin or the Midwest, your passion for whatever it is that you're doing is there, that's great. But still broaden your horizons by getting experience outside of Wisconsin or the Midwest. Here's a fellow pointer who's a forestry student. And there's not many trees in Greenland. But he broadened his horizon by volunteering with me during my graduate work in Western Greenland. Ryan and I spent 2 summers together, and he'll be the first to tell you that it changed his life. And he's now a forest pathologist in North Carolina. Has nothing to do with wildlife, but these kinds of experiences and a lot of the skills and perspectives that you gain from them are transferable regardless of your specialty. And now for a little bit of this is my last one. It's a little unconventional. Do what makes you uncomfortable. And there's a couple contexts here. Academically speaking, statistics make me uncomfortable. They always have, they always will. Some people get it. Some people get statistics, and I'm not one of those people. Writing made me uncomfortable. Presentations, public presentations, yeah, it made me uncomfortable, and it probably makes most students uncomfortable. But you get better in those skills by focusing on them, not by turning away from them. So use that little gut feeling in you. You know when you're uncomfortable, and why is that? And focus on that and try to lean into that to understand it and ideally to overcome that. And this is a photo of a fellow pointer who was a member of a class that Bob and I team taught in Greenland, learning how to rappel. So that it goes to field work as well. You know, if you're not comfortable with something, do it safely, of course, but lean into that uncomfort or that discomfort and learn the skill. That also applies for conferences, because I remain uncomfortable in conferences when I'm trying to meet people, right? Networking is hard. To go up to meet someone that you don't know. You know them in the literature, you know their work, you know their name, you know their reputation. Maybe they're the president of the Wildlife Society. But identify that discomfort, think about it, and then try to remedy it. And then I don't want to just talk to you about suggestions. I also want to live what I'm suggesting. So in my title slide, I'm going to be honest with you that I'm a little uncomfortable coming back to the Wildlife Society as an out gay wildlife biologist. I was a closeted student when I was student chapter of the Wildlife Society, as have a number of past chapter presidents, one of which who left the wildlife field because of the culture in the wildlife profession. And I want to end with, I guess, an ask is that you are the future of the wildlife profession. And the wildlife profession has a bit of an image problem. And it's not just an image, it's also a systemic inequality in our system. And that's changing. But I want to end asking you to use your voice to help others and lean into being a little uncomfortable, because that's often where you develop the most, where you learn the most, and what really becomes the most important learning opportunities in your life, or at least in your academic career. And start that with your chapter. It's a big topic, being increasing diversity and inclusion. I've been working a lot on that in the national TWS organization. But it's important to bring it down to the local level. And I want to do that with the student chapter, partly because of my previous experience with the chapter. No negativity suggested at all. But there's a number of students who came out of that chapter who left the wildlife profession because we were not diverse and we were not inclusive. So it is very relevant all the way down to your own student chapter. So I just want to end with that ask. And it's really awesome seeing the movement moving forward with your generation. We are changing that image and that structure. The number of women that are coming up in the wildlife profession is awesome, and it's wonderful to see that. We are becoming more diverse, we are becoming more inclusive. And I just want to make sure that we're not just paying lip service to that. That is a critical thing that we need to work on if we want wildlife management to remain relevant and to be able to respond to our constituents that are a diverse population. So I want to end with this pretty awesome photo of a pointer taken in Western Greenland in front of a glacial, in front of the front of Greenland's glacial ice sheet. I hope that this talk gave you some suggestions on how to navigate your path to becoming a wildlife professional and overcoming some challenges and identifying challenges in front of us and yeah, hopefully overcoming them. So at that point, I will stop sharing my screen and I would be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much, Travis. A little round of applause for you as best we can here, guys. Maybe some emojis. There we go. Thank you so much. Always inspiring. That first conversation I had with you. We were at a bar. I was just, some kid, and you just talked to me like we'd been friends. That's the inspiration we need to use in this field, and we're going to continue to do that. So thank you for being here, and thanks for being an inspiration.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, guys. So it looks like there's maybe some questions coming in the chat, or maybe some notes. Feel free to unmute or type them in the chat for our presenter here. Cool. Travis, you are able to see the chat if one comes in, correct? Okay, cool. Yeah. So I guess I'll start. I had a question. So with your work with the Greve Falcon, that cliff research, you are using a helicopter, which is an extremely expensive piece of equipment. And to someone that isn't wildlife minded, that isn't conservation minded, they'd be like, why the heck are we spending that money for you to go look at a bird in a helicopter, right? So right. How do you explain the importance of that to people, so that, or even when you're asking for that money, I'm sure you have to explain that importance as well. So how do you go about navigating that?
Yeah, relevancy is a really important thing that we as wildlife professionals and wildlife students have to explain to the people that employ us. I'm employed by the citizens of Alaska. So I need to be able to justify those expenses. Helicopters run about $1,000 an hour, and doing one survey costs me about $18,000. But there's no other way to do the work. In Western Alaska, there are no roads. and you cannot hike to enough sites to have any idea of trying to understand what the population dynamics are of the species.